What's going on out there, YouTube fam? This is Sammy Leggett here representing Team JVS, here to give you guys what you want, which is an early review of the first 4 episodes of Moon Knight. Now, just full disclaimer, this is a non-spoiler review, so I will not be disclosing any vivid details, but I will be talking about things that I really liked, things that I maybe didn't, and I'm going to go into the nitty-gritty. Now, the thing about Moon Knight, it's had other miniseries before it. It's had WandaVision before it. It had Falcon and Winter Soldier before it. It had Loki before, which I really actually like Loki out of nowhere. And I'm happy to tell you guys that this is another breath of fresh air in something very different that's not set in New York, but instead in Egypt and all over different locations in London. And I just really had a lot of fun with Moon Knight. I'll tell you that off the gate. So Oscar Isaac is playing the role of Moon Knight, but he basically is a man named somebody that is dealing with a dissociative disorder, and we don't know really who's the right one, but there's Mark and then there's Steven. And because of that fluctuation, there's a lot going on with his issues. On top of, he just happens to be the conduit of this Egyptian god in Khonshu. Khonshu basically is this entity of other gods within this universe, which is so weird to even talk about in MCU. But to be fair, there is implied about the Panther, Black Panther, and other, demigods, and even Thor technically is considered Norse god. But either way, one day he comes to realize something is wrong. And around that same day, ironically, he is met by Ethan Hawke's character. Ethan Hawke's character, author, is also very involved with things that are going on surrounding, this individual that is Moon Knight. And it makes for a very interesting situation. I'm so trying to be so vague. Let's just go and talk about the backdrop. So the location changes I loved. I think that they have some really great shots. I think that the cinematography worked really well with the choreography for the fight scenes. The fight scenes were very brutal. Now, I know this is right off the heels from them adding the Netflix shows, which I am very happy about. Those Netflix shows are very brutal, and MA all the way. This, if it's very close to MA. It's basically like 16, like NC 16, basically. Like they hold punches, but then they don't. Like there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of body counts. Off the first episode, you realize, oh wow, this is really bad. But they do something which I feel like The Dark Knight has done very well in showing the brutality of the situation, but without showing, the vividness of the gore and the blushing of blood. But they do go certain levels with it. So I do appreciate the tone. They really do go for it. But then they also counterbalance the tone with some comedic moments. Like the very first episode, you're going to feel this man is very tortured, right? But then you start to realize, like, man, there's some interesting dynamics with this talking back and forth. And I mean, you've seen it with Tom Hardy, with Venom. For whatever you think about the movies, like that element is really good. If you think about the M. Night Shyamalan's franchise with Unbreakable and what, James McAvoy did with The Beast and that back and forth conversation, same kind of situation, but it progresses. It goes a lot more atmospheric and expansive because, again, with the cinematography, they use mirrors. Every single reflected, Oscar Isaac on a dime has to immediately turn it off, turn on, turn off, turn on. Sometimes they had to have shot many different scenes on so many different angles and locations to make sure that the conversation go back and forth. Most of the time, you have a conversation with yourself, you kind of see it to the side in a mirror, maybe, but you don't see it reflect off everything. And so it makes some very good visceral conversations and conflictions with the character that I think is one of the strongest points of the show. I do love the suit. If you've seen the trailer, you know what I mean by that. But like, the suit and the way they utilize the suit and what it can do is very fascinating, especially when you see it in full form. Like the very opening and when he actually transforms is epic. I'm not taking anything away from that. As far as Ethan Hawke as a character, like he comes off very conniving, maniacal. And I'm 4 episodes in, but he's still progressing as a villain, even at this point. Like, there's still a lot to him. There's layers to him that makes it very interesting and engaging, that I think that you're going to be very fascinated by him as a villain. Another person I think it was a standout was May Calamawy, that plays the role of Layla. Layla, well, I don't want to say too much. I gotta be real careful. I don't want to say too much. But there's characters that surround Marc, and there's one specific character that does a very interesting job of like setting a very interesting threat to Marc on an emotional and a psychological side, because these conversations that he's always having with himself, it also doesn't disinclude other people. And because of that, it makes for good television. It makes for good story. It makes for good layers. There are certain moments in the conversations that I'm like, man, that's wrong. But then is it really wrong? Or is it just Oscar Isaac's nailing both or multiple versions of this role that making me look at these as different entities? You know what I mean? So as far as in Marvel, so this is not, it is Marvel. Like, they definitely make sure, like, you got the Marvel, like, landings. You got the Marvel-esque moments of comedy here or there. You got, like, the feeling of an otherworldly thing, and then the full tilt blueprint, kind of like, all right, this is a world threat kind of situation possibly. But then they keep it really grounded, too. And that's what Moon Knight should be. Moon Knight should be grounded. He should be, weighty, like meaty, like there should be some real psychological things going on. And that's one of the things that I say is the best thing about it. In the 4th episode, you really start to see where the psychological side, like 1st episode and the 4th episode really start to dive in to the psychological and how twisted this story really could actually be. And even how weird it can be. Because even in the 3rd episode, there's things I didn't like about the 3rd episode personally, in terms of like the tonal shift, and then it was kind of like a waste of time, some of the moments. But they do present something very fascinating towards the end of that episode. And I was just like, what are they doing? And I think that's the beauty of Marvel. Like, Marvel always gives you something that you will not expect, but are just in awe of, you know what I mean? And I think that if they stick to that baseline rawness and that just making it its own without any kind of connective, because honestly, there's not a lot of connective tissue with this. Not at all. Like, if they kind of like, almost like Venom, you know what I mean? Like, you can tell that there may be like other things going on in the world, but because it's not in New York and because it's taking place in the UK or in Egypt or wherever, it makes for very grounded and just natural progression. Like, it doesn't feel like it's being forced. And I love that. I really do love that. The things I don't like about this is when it tries to be a little too campy, when it takes over long, when the jokes go over long, or when like somebody is just like been decapitated or something terrible just happened and they just start springing a joke versus like the PTSD of the situation. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's weird because in the 1st episode, it kept very grounded, specifically with a certain version of this character. And then it just begins to, oh, wow, now we're doing this. Oh, now I'm going to be doing that. Oh, I'm going to be, and you're kind of just like, what is going on? But then when you get to the 4th episode, it may not even matter. And that's the thing that fascinates me. Like, I think that if I hadn't got to the 4th episode, I'd been kind of like, But I think you will get pulled the 1st episode and the 2nd episode easily. And there's certain things in the 3rd episode that kind of like fall a little short. But then if you keep at it, whoo, the implications of where this is actually going to go could be something that I think that is very needed for fresh blood for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's all I'm going to say. I rest this at a 9 out of 10. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review for Moon Knight. Definitely tune in Disney Plus immediately as it drops. I believe it drops on the 31st. Let me make sure about that. 30th. Wednesday the 30th. So definitely go and check it out. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell button, and we'll be back. We got a lot more coverage coming. I'm about to do my review for the first 5 episodes of killing Eve. Peace, guys.
Falling off the top of the